I am Tatar Khan, and let's talk about The Shadow of the Gods, a fantasy novel by John Gwynne. This is going to be an impressions video as I chose not to finish the book for the reasons I will explain in the video itself. I want to start off with the author, John Gwynne. He has written some other fantasy books before, and also in his biography he's described as a Viking enthusiast. And to add to that, the picture at the back of the book, him in the chainmail, and my expectations were built up due to all this kind of information. And so, let's get into the book now. The book settings takes place in a fantasy world inspired by Scandinavian and Norsemen. As for the plot, well, I'm not sure what it is because, well, I read 140 pages out of 480, so slightly more than 1/4 of the book, and I'm not certain exactly what the plot is so far. Something is going to happen for sure, but what is, it is still unclear. Now, there are three main protagonists in the book, and I will talk about each one of them in turn. I would like also to note that none of them have met so far with each other in any way or any capacity. So, the first protagonist is Orca. She's a mother and she also has a husband. She's a mother to a 10 years old child. And about after 140 pages so far, I found that, well, so far there's no really movement in her story. All I see is there's a slice of life situations there that I described. Yes, an argument could be made that an attack on her neighbors and the whole business that's going on in the actual town, maybe showing that something is going to happen. However, we are told from the very beginning that this is a very hard and dark world, and so all these things might be just things that usually happen in this world. There's no indications that anything that was happening right now is really world upending or life-changing in any way. So I'm not sure exactly with this character exactly what's going on here. Maybe there's some juxtaposition of her character towards her husband, but again, there's no clarity there either. So the second protagonist we have is Varg. He's a runaway slave whose backstory is also not very clear because we're not told of it completely. So far it's only told in small snippets, and it has something to do with killing of his former master and that sister, and he's looking for a witch, something to do with his sister again. Exactly what, not sure. And that's, I think, as far as we get. And when it comes to actual plot and the story, this is the only character that where we actually see some kind of a movement and something is happening in the plot and the story. So, but in the end, it's not exactly clear why should I actually care about this character and like what kind of motivations he has. It's something to do again with his dead sister, but exactly not really clear. And I'm not trying to be here kind of obscure about it so that I don't spoil anything. No, I don't need to do any of that exactly because I'm telling you all the information so far that's been provided in the book, and that's all I got, right? So there doesn't need to be anything really to hide anything from you right now. Like I said, 140 pages into the book. So the third character we have, the third protagonist, is Elvar. She's a warrior with a band of other warriors that hunt in humans and beasts, and that's the way they earn a living. Her story might be related to the results of the last hunt this band of warriors did. However, again, it's not exactly clear. So now you see why I decided to stop reading the book, because in a quarter I'm way in the book and nothing so far is really happening to interest me. Yes, it's possible to say that if you take 140 pages, divide by 3 characters, each one gets 30 plus pages or so of development, so then yeah, maybe it's too early to judge, but it was the author's choice to create 3 protagonists for his novel. They're all not even meeting each other together, so it's not even plot somehow developing together. And that's another issue. Usually when you have multiple protagonists, the idea is there to present the same story, same events from multiple points of view, or to create some kind of juxtaposition between the different protagonists. And none of this so far is happening in the book. Again, 1/4 of the way in, nothing's happening. So I really was at that point losing interest. So what I really liked about the book, let's talk about that. I really like the descriptions in the book. Everything is described: buildings, interior, decorations, clothing, food. Like, it's all very well done. The description of food, they are so good that you can almost taste it, all right? The author goes into all the details that are necessary to paint a very vivid picture, but he does not kind of make them too long, they don't overstay your welcome. It's really, really well done when it comes to descriptions. The world the author presents is also very much thought through. It's clear there's a body of lore that the author is using to drop on to create necessary things, and then introduces sections of that lore as necessary in the actual plot. So from that perspective, we have a very interesting place for the reader to immerse himself or herself in. The world author presents is well thought through, like I said, and it rests on the Norse epics and mythology, and just generally life of the Norsemen. So we have, I believe, all the lives, the dress, the food, it's all described as it would have been in the medieval Scandinavia of the period when they used to go and raid the rest of Europe. I'm not an expert on that period, so I cannot really critique that section of the world and how it is done, like whether it's correct completely. And at the same time, it is a fantasy world after all, so some of it might not have to be correct. But there are a few things I need to critique because, well, they kind of peeked at me. And as I said in the very beginning, the author's biography gave me some hope about how the fighting will be done in the book and how it will be described specifically. At first, everything seems fine. The description of hand-to-hand fighting was good. So was the description of how the armor is put on, such as chainmail and so on. And the reason I can tell that is because I actually do historical European martial arts, what's called HEMA, and as such I have experience in hand-to-hand fighting with a dagger, with a sword fighting, and I have seen how the chainmail is put on, how the armor is put on, so that way I can judge from descriptions what is actually correct and what is not. And like I said, hand-to-hand fighting is good. Putting on armor is good, but then we get into the problems when it comes to the actual fighting with weapons. The first time we have a problem is when one of the characters is training another character. So what they do, the characters are using the shield for the first time. The shield is given, and instructions are given how to hold it, how to stand. Everything is correct. Then the trainer picks up a sharp spear and starts to attack the trainee to test the trainee's ability to cover attacks. Now, there's a problem with that because, like in modern times, back in the day, people did not want to injure themselves or others during training. That kind of was not a great idea, so they did not use sharp weapons. Number two, the issue that they do actually, in the end, they injure the trainee lightly, but they still draw blood and stuff like that, shows that the trainer does not have a good control over the weapons to stop themselves. I've seen people fence with sharp weapons in a control setting where they had very little protection on them, but that was done because both persons were masters enough of to hold that and fence with a sword to make sure that they're not gonna hurt each other. Here in the book the situation is different. We have a person for the first time training with weapons being attacked with a sharp weapon. Second issue when I saw it in the book was when we're moving on to the fight between two individuals. They're using one is using a shield and a sword, the other one is using a shield and an axe. And here it begins to be a problem because what happens is that they covering the attacks, actually not covering, blocking attacks with a shield. Yes, it's possible to block attacks with a shield, but this is usually the last type of ditch defense a person does when they cannot do anything else, so they so late that that's the only thing they can do. Usually you defend against a weapon with another weapon. So if attack is coming at you with a sword, you guys use your sword or your axe to defend against it. Then you can carry it over to the shield, use the shield to exclude the opponent's weapon, but you're not gonna be using the shield to block, especially when we given description that both people fighting here are actually experienced fighters. They have been trained, they have military experience, so they should know better. But that's not what we're seeing there. And in the end, the shield is usually used to exclude targets from attack, right? Because nobody's gonna go ahead and try to whack at the shield. Nobody does that, because what's the point? People usually aim for uncovered parts of the body. So you use the shield to exclude attacks, not again to block them. So while this whole fighting things in the whole money thing are kind of a bad, but usually it's not enough to stop me from reading a book, because, well, most of the fantasy authors make this kind of mistakes, especially when it comes to fighting, because most of the authors don't have a martial arts experience or don't have experience with weapons to really write about this kind of a thing or know exactly how it should be done. So usually it's not enough to stop me. What stopped me was, of course, as I mentioned before, the fact that there's no advancement in the plot after more than a quarter of the book has been read, and I'm still waiting for something to hook me in the plot. So overall, I'm gonna say that this is an okay of a book based on all of my critiques, but at the same time, I'm gonna say it's a very cool book because of its subject. We're dealing here with Norsemen, we're dealing with different monsters and Inhumans based on the Norse mythology. So from that perspective, it's a very cool. From other perspective, it's okay of a book. Well, thank you for watching and for listening. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe.